Words actually determine the outcome of our lives, but it's the mantras that we have, those things that live within, those things that are underneath, the story that we really almost silently tell ourselves that determine the outcome of our lives. Now, there are some things that should never come out of your mouth externally, or out of your mouth internally. There are things that should never come out of your mouth. Proverbs chapter 18, verse number 21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it will eat its fruit." Hey, love what you say, because you're going to eat the fruit of the kind of things that you say. In the book of Proverbs, David actually used Solomon to speak these words to us. He said, now above all else, he said, guard your heart. In the NLT it says, for it affects everything that you do. Another translation says that that's where the root of all the fruit in your life comes from. Verse 24 said, above all else, stay away from a froward mouth. What is a froward mouth? A froward mouth is a twisted mouth. Stay away from twisted thoughts, twisted statements in your life. He said, put away from you a froward mouth. He said, and perverse lips put far from you. Well, what does perverse actually mean? It's just crooked. Have you ever had to face off with things that people are telling you it's just crooked, it's not true, it's not straight, and so because of that, this perversity of mouth, this crooked or contrary speech, a person who always wants to argue all the time, just argue, just saying things that are contrary. He said, now put that stuff away from you, stay away from that. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse number 24, the Bible tells us, he said, now pleasant words are as a honeycomb. He said, sweet to the soul and their health to the bones. Pleasant words are a honeycomb. They're sweet. They're sweet to you. It just comes down into you. It's absolutely wonderful. The next chapter, Proverbs 25, verse number 11, he says this, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in setting of silver. See, a word fitly spoken, the right mantra that you're telling yourself. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. Now we know, most of the individuals that are watching this, we understand who the Apostle Paul is. Because if you took Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, another person who would have been known at that level, had he not had a conversion, would be this guy, Saul of Tarsus. But Saul becomes this believer when the light of God, the power of God shows up, and he's knocked right off his horse because of the ever-increasing glory that God revealed himself to him with. In Ephesians 4:29, he says, now, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. He said, but that which is good for the use of edifying, for building people up. I was talking to a person yesterday, or just texting back and forth with them, who has a television program that many of you actually watched. And I was just telling them how I believed in them, how that they were really great to keep up the good work, that everything was going to be fine. And they just said, oh, thank you so much. Those are words that I needed to hear right now. They needed to have their mantra changed. It's not just things that you stand in front of the mirror and say every morning, but your mantra is the story that you're consistently telling yourself. Just remember that people can destroy our lives with words, but we can also give life to people with words. That's really important. And you need to know this, that your life is transformed the moment that you stop listening to yourself and you begin speaking to yourself.